I'm Jessie Sage. Welcome to another episode of When We're Not Hustling After Party.
Hi, I'm Emily Foster. I'm the producer of When We're Not Hustling. This is the after party. We have a very, very special guest today who I'm sure you can already see. But before we introduce her, I want you to follow us, like us, and tell all your friends about us, and leave us a comment. We love interaction. And Jessie, why don't you tell us, everyone, a little bit about Milk?
Milk can talk for themselves, I think.
I mean, I guess.
Well, and you should totally leave this in. I'm gonna correct you. My pronouns are they, them. I do not use
I'm so sorry.
pronouns.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your apology, and the best way to go about it is just to move on from it. I go by Melissa Milk. I'm a member of the neurodivergent kink poly community in Pittsburgh, originally from New Jersey, found the kink scene in Philadelphia, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and Milk has been a guest on a previous episode, and I have to say that I just started with my partner shibari classes with Milk and Milk's partner. It was so fun. We did our first one on Thursday night.
We had a really good time too. We love teaching, but also like when we get to teach people that we want to be or are friends with, it's even more fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. So they like mirrored everything for us. So it was really fun.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's
and
really
you're kind
fun.
of starting classes in your place too. Do you want to plug that real quick?
Yeah. So I don't have a name for my home studio yet. So that's coming. And we have a few classes this month, which are actually, even though it was just by word of mouth, fully booked.
That's
it's a
awesome.
small space with 5 hard points where we can teach probably up to 8 people in a very like intimate boutique like setting.
That's so awesome.
Filled with like mirrors and equipment that people can use. I'm really excited to get like a public schedule up. We're working on that now, but like the fact that I was just able to tell like the local community and get some people in means that I'll have like content to put up on a website that should go out in the next month.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I want to come and do that too, but we're doing the private lessons at our house. It's very fun. So yes. PJ and I are like, we got to practice. We have to like do our things. It's hard.
That sounds like really good homework.
It is good homework, but it's hard. I was like, you'd think you could just do it, but then I'm like looking and Milk's like, oh, you just do this and this. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm looking at I'm like, does it go over? Does it go under? You're supposed to, I don't know. I'm trying.
That's what the practice is for.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Chloe Nova today. Chloe Nova is a New York City-based sex worker who took off after college and traveled around the world for 5 years hitchhiking.
Yeah.
It's kind of badass.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, a lot of trust.
A lot of trust. Yeah.
You know, and I think primarily in self, right? Because like, yes, you have to trust the people that you're getting in the car with, but I've done some limited hitchhiking. I've lived in places where there was no public transportation in and out, and sometimes you got to get places. And for me, hitchhiking as a femme presenting person, not high femme by any means, but there's no hiding.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of it had to do with me choosing the rides and finding that graceful way to be like, oh, I'm good. I'm sorry. My friend just called, you know, or whatever it was. But so much trust. That's what really hit me first with that. It was like, wow, how do you pick?
Yeah. I think that she said something really profound somewhere in the episode there, though. She said something like that she didn't want to live her life based on worst case scenarios.
Very valid. Yeah.
I feel like from someone who grew up in my generation where like we're in school and there's like DARE programs and this and that, and you're constantly getting these messages of like, these things are dangerous, don't do them. It's really cool to like, hitchhiking is never something that I thought that like somebody would, you know, give me a history on. Like, and this was like for somebody to say, oh no, like everything else, like, you know, Black liberation movements, this is something that was like sort of demonized for a reason by the government.
Right.
Was really surprising. And I was like, oh, and it really like it immediately, as someone who has also like forced myself to skew my perspectives on other things, it causes a shift where you're like, oh wait, like you can, like, yes, this can be dangerous, but like we are genuinely assuming the absolute worst of a practice that has existed for as long as cars have. So
Yeah, right.
True.
Yeah.
It's true. I think I've
Yeah.
given more rides than I've taken, but I definitely pick up hitchhikers,
yeah,
like
same.
that's, but I also pass by some hitchhikers.
Yeah.
Be
I've
real fair
never
about that. And it's
hitchhiked. I've
not
never
always
picked
because
up
of me.
someone and I've never hitchhiked. But like I said in the episode, like I remember when I was growing up in California, there was tons of hitchhikers and that was kind of part of the culture. And then, like I said, it just disappeared. And like you said, Milk, it's interesting to hear them talk about the fact that, or hear her talk about the fact that like that was for a reason. There was like a campaign
Right.
against it.
Yeah. And we think like I pick up people, I come from a history of like living in New Jersey and Philadelphia using a lot of public transport. And like it's not always reliable. So like I've had people see me on the side of the road, not hitchhiking, but be like walking somewhere and be like, do you want to ride? And like I've done the same thing for people. And we think of that as like hitchhiking and it has the stigma, but like think if you were like at a job and you just met someone, you've not talked to them for more than 5 minutes, but they're like, they don't have a ride home. You're going to offer them a ride home. Why is hitchhiking? Hitchhiking is not that much different.
Right. It's just that you happen to be in the same place at the same time. So you give them more credit or something. Trust. Yeah.
Right. And we're like, hitchhiking challenges the notion of like the theme of the episode, that radical trust.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved that whole discussion. And I was thinking about how like I hadn't thought about the fact until she talked about it that what the connection between like the sex work session and like a hitchhiking ride are. And I like to think like it's interesting. It's interesting to me the way we think about safety, and what's dangerous and what's not dangerous. Because my mom, for example, who's been on the show, was really afraid when I started doing in-person sex work. And I understand that because there's so much like fear around it. And it's not that there isn't risks in sex work, but my mom was a social worker who worked for Adult Protective Services, who had to go into houses all the time with people who were hostile to her being there and where there was like suspected abuse by herself, and I'm thinking to myself, well, you have some legitimacy as a social worker. So like nobody's telling you that like you're taking unnecessary risks and you shouldn't be doing that. And I feel like the work that I'm doing where I'm like screening everybody that like I don't go into a room with someone who like has been reported for abuse. My mom does that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
we eliminate those people. You go to them.
Right. And I think that that's interesting. And I was thinking about the fact that like we think about some things just because they're not criminalized and they're not deemed by the government to be something that we shouldn't be doing, to be perfectly fine and normal and something that you can talk about. And then other things are criminalized and stigmatized to the fact that like to the point that they get wiped out of view.
Yeah. And I actually like listening to the podcast. I think one of the best things about it is like there always seems to be common threads between like situations or even people, and that sort of like commonness of this connection between like practices that we think are stigmatized and then like how they relate, even like your mom's job to your job. Like it's so when you bring it into the light, it's so obvious.
Right.
Like I would not want to be
like, wait, you're scared that I'm going to be alone with strangers. What?
You do that every day. Multiple times a day.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not giving my mom shit at all about this. I'm just saying this is how like we like construct things in our culture, and I think it's really interesting. And like we're thinking about like why we think some things are more dangerous than other things.
I feel like it also in the whole thread of radical trust and what we're talking about, like challenges the dynamic of like it's much easier to take away trust. than it is to give or to earn trust.
Yeah.
So, like the notion that like it could, with like a little bit of propaganda, it could be really easy to remove trust from like a practice, a community, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
We let, millions of people die, and it was just a little bit of propaganda, and a couple announcements from the CDC, and it was just okay. And now we can look at it in horror, but at the time, a
Yeah.
lot of people were like, this is okay because it says so. The government said so.
Right.
Yeah.
What would the world be like if more people practiced a little bit of radical trust, and then like
Yeah.
when they open themselves up, actually learn about like what
Yeah.
people are really like.
I
Right.
think
Yeah.
that's what this show like consistently does. I think that Jesse is naturally a person who is constantly curious about the world. I try my best to have a beginner mindset with everything, but like every single show, I'm like, well, there's another thing I got wrong. Like, well, there's another. I love it so much. I'm 49, and if I was not in this job position, I would definitely not be being challenged as much as I am, because it's just not built into our society,
Right.
especially for 49-year-old white women, to challenge their views.
Yeah.
It's just not built in. We're just left alone to think what we will.
Yeah.
But I love it. And that's really valid. I came into it thinking, like, well, I mean, sure, I've participated in hitchhiking and it's been fine, and I've had a great time, and I've heard better stories and made cooler friends and doing a lot of other things, but still, it's dangerous, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to say that like it's not dangerous. I mean, she does talk about getting like kidnapped and stranded places, but she also
Yeah.
talks about like how she learned to like going back to what you were saying, Emily, like to trust herself to like figure out how to get out of those situations.
Right.
And one of the things that I really liked that came out of it that I felt a lot about in terms of sex work is that there's something that happens in sex work because they're relationships that are like completely outside of the social order, like that opens up this space for very different kinds of conversations, very different kinds of connections. And what Chloe was saying that I thought was really interesting that I hadn't thought about is the Hitchhiker Ride is very similar. You're putting like two people who have ostensibly like no common connection into this like liminal space kind of that's outside of the social order.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives me this mental
Yeah.
image of like, I mean, two people sitting in the front seat of a truck or a car is not that different from like two people sitting on a hotel room bed.
Yeah.
It's like
right.
a lot
Yeah.
of at least half of what you do is talking to the person.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least.
People wanting to like
Yeah.
share their experiences and not having a place for that, and knowing like this space is outside of my friend circle, outside of my like my intimate relationships, outside of all of these things. So let me tell you about X, Y, and Z because
Everything. Yeah.
I'm not even supposed to be with you right now. So
Yeah.
this
don't even
isn't gonna
exist.
you don't exist, and there's a way that sometimes that feels uh that's a big job, like to exist for people but not exist for people.
Yes.
And but other times that actually feels like kind of a like reciprocal gift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 No, I love that.
Yeah.
The stories that you can tell someone that you're never going to see again are very
Mm-hmm.
different.
Mm-hmm.
They
Super
are never,
cathartic.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just
Mm-hmm.
being free of um, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I'm super aware of how words affect my
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and how the same narrative sounds different telling it to a different person because of the boundaries of our relationship and
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
words that we use. And being free from all of that, not
Yeah.
having any internal editor worrying about, oh, here are the subjects that I should avoid for Jesse, or for this person, or just saying it, and this
Yeah.
idiot and this idiot, and they might be people I adore, but in this
Yeah.
story they're an idiot, and I want to just tell it.
Yeah, one of my sex worker friends
Yeah.
one time told me that she actually went and got a counseling license because she was like, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to deal with all of these like stories that I'm hearing. But
Right.
and the catalyst for her doing that is one of her clients, a longtime client, saying, you are the only person in the world that knows like everything, because I tell all my stuff to my therapist too, but my therapist knows the things I tell you without knowing about you, but you know about because they're like, he's like, I can tell her all kinds of things, except I don't want to tell her that I see a hooker. So like you hold all of the information. And she's like, damn, why? Like, why do I hold all of your information? But also like there is something to that. They do like my PJ's dissertation advisor, their like longtime advisor. His dad is a sociologist, but his dad was a taxi driver in New York City and talked about a lot of the same thing, like this idea of like intimacy with strangers, because taxi
Yeah,
drivers are experience something similar. So I don't know. All of that was really
definitely.
interesting.
I was also
Yeah.
really interested, and I feel like it connects like a little tiny bit with the like freedom of expression, lack of fear, and like talking about things you wouldn't normally talk about. But like when she had spoken about how like hitchhiking also like made her akin with the process of like do things that challenge you, do things that
Yeah.
you're afraid of, because like
Mhm.
I've also been on a journey lately of like doing things that kind of scare me. But then, like,
Hmm.
usually in some way, even if I fail at the thing, the
Yeah.
fact that I tried was a
Hmm.
success.
Hmm.
And, like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
that's very freeing, and people should do that more often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was at this I was a speaker at this event in at UNLV a couple in January, I think. And the people who were the keynotes were people who were a lesbian couple who did a lot of like lesbian porn in like the early aughts in San Francisco, and a lot of like avant-garde stuff. And they donated. The event was like the inauguration of this erotic economies archive at the library. And so they had donated like so much of the content that they made like over that period of time at the very beginning of like the indie porn scene. And when they were talking, one of the things that they were saying that really resonated with me and with what you were just saying is that what they think is missing in our like culture now, especially like in a social media age where we're supposed to have everything so polished by the time that it like goes out, is this like ability to fail, um, and to experiment and to try things. And they were also like connecting that to the economy too, because they're like, we lived in San Francisco before the tech boom, and we lived in artist collectives, and we hardly needed any money. So we could also just fail in that way. And it wasn't dire, and that there's something missing when we don't have the ability to like experiment and do things that we're afraid of, and recognize that it's okay if it doesn't work out, and we'll bounce back and do something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be changed by it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're changed by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I performed for the first time musically at 38, 38, 39, 36, somewhere super. It was very late in life that I learned
Mm-hmm.
how to play and sing in front of people, and I was terrified of it. I threw up the first like 10 times that I performed. I'd like run off a stage, dropped my guitar, and
Mm-hmm.
it was terrible. But even if I had stopped doing that, which I didn't, I ended up pursuing it, which was great. But I was radically transformed as a person by
Mm-hmm.
doing something I was terrified of and having it turn out kind of bad.
Yeah.
Like it was technically a success. I sang well. I'm lucky I have a good voice and I can write songs, and yay. And it went well in that way, but it also went very badly. Like no one wants to watch a performer drop a guitar and goes bolting out of the room. And if they happen to fall on that side, no one needs to know that, like, and
Yeah.
still the next day I woke up a different person. I
Mm,
woke up and was like, whoa, I totally lived through that.
yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a part of you that's like, you won't live. If you get up there and it goes bad, you really won't.
I've even like I have a friend who kayaks and also works with a program where they like take vets or like kids out river rafting, and he was like, I want to take you out. And me and my partner and his partner and another friend, we all went like through some rapids on a river raft. And funny enough, like the boat flipped, we fell in the water, and he was like, he is also neurodivergent. And so like his ADHD was just taking him to a place where he was like, I'm so sorry you ended up getting wet and you fell in the water and blah, blah, blah. And me and my partner were both like, but you don't understand. Like, we went into this afraid because we've never done it before. And like, we fell in, and like, technically that's what you're scared of. And like, everything was fine. Like, we did all the things that you told us to do. And everything turned out okay. So now, like, if we do it again, we're like, oh, well, that's already happened. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, and I know that I can survive, and I know that I have the tools to survive. So like, I feel even more well-equipped because we failed and didn't succeed at what we were doing.
I felt like that. This is an aside, but I felt like that the first time in my previous marriage that we like opened our marriage, and that was something I was like afraid to do when we did that. And I remember going out on a date with like this other couple and being like, oh, this is going to be like a disaster. Like, I won't be able to handle this. And then having a very like great experience with these other people and coming home and in the morning making pancakes for the kids and hanging out and being like, the worst thing you could imagine in a marriage, like seeing your partner sleep with someone else, just happened in front of me last night. And guess what? Nothing. I'm fine.
We're still here.
Still here. Making pancakes. I lived. It was fun. I don't know. We're fine.
I love
Everything
that.
is fine. And that was like a thing that was like, that's the thing you're afraid of. And sometimes when you just see or experience the thing you're afraid is going to happen, and then you realize that like it wasn't, the fear of it was worse than the thing itself, then you're okay. Yeah. Well, that's
a great place to wrap this one up, right?
Like, say that. Yeah.
Okay, audience, whatever it is that you've been a little afraid of, it's okay to try it and fail. We are not advocating for everyone to go whitewater rapid
or hitchhiking or swinging
hitchhiking
or anything,
or open up their marriage or jump on stage at an open mic. But if there's something, maybe give it a try.
Challenging a perspective usually involves a little fear, and it's a healthy thing to push against it and see what happens.
Yeah. I like that.